Hi, welcome to the workshop. Today we're going to be working on a driving bed. It is really lovely to be back in the bed. It has been quite a while, and as always it starts first time and runs beautifully. Now obviously this one is automatic, just like many of our other vehicles with Comfy Banana. Now this bed is called Fast Asleep, but it isn't actually quite as fast as it once was. We first built this on an old Ford V6 and it had rear wheel drive, it would do donuts, it was mental. But actually this is a little bit more sedate because I wanted some super duper reliability. So this particular vehicle is based on a Rover 1400 CVT, which means I haven't really got to worry about extra pedals for things like gear changes and stuff, which is much better. It means all the fumbling under the covers isn't quite so suspicious. Now, despite its slightly smaller engine, it still manages about 80 miles an hour on a really, really good day. And in fact, we got into the Guinness World Records book for about, I think it was 69 miles an hour, which the sun found very amusing. But it was a really good fun day out. In fact, quite a surreal one, trying to do a speed record in the middle of London where all those speed limits are.
New Guinness World Record for the fastest bed.
Has obviously got lots of extra capacity for people, so we have 4 people sitting in the front here and 2 in the back here. And when you're driving along, as long as the weather's okay, you can still see quite comfortably from the driving position, even though you've got all these extra guests in the bed with you. Now, of course, this car is a little bit weather dependent. As you can imagine, when it rains, it can get a little bit whippy for one thing, and of course the duvet will flap around and all that rain will go straight into your face. So it's definitely worth wearing some kind of flying goggle or at least some kind of eye protection. Now this second Rover-based version of this bed was probably finished about 15 years ago or so, so it's actually still in pretty good nick. And it's had all kinds of different guises. Obviously the bed knobs and broomsticks version you see right now has also been slightly modified, so it actually looks like a hotel bed with a kind of a headboard at the back and nothing at the front. We've had all kinds of different colours and shapes, as you can imagine, over the years. One thing we haven't done though is a music video. The slightly crazy thing is, it's not the first bed we ever built. The very first one was actually a big wooden 4-poster, and it was based on a Type 3 Volkswagen, sort of like a fastback or a notchback, and it must have been back, what, in 98? 98, 99, there we go. So we did it for the Ideal Home show, I think to remember.
Yeah, for Earls Court, yeah. We built a bathroom bike as well.
Yes.
For the same job.
We had the sofa, of course.
And then on the day of the show, I think you were driving the bed up Earls Court Road with me in tail with the bathroom bike.
Right.
You had Carol Vorderman in the bed and I had Charlie Dimmock in the sidecar, which was great fun.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. Well, there we go. So we used the bed, the bathroom and the sofa basically to open the show and then promote it for the week that it was on. So it was great fun. And the reason we went for a Type 3 Volkswagen, basically with a Beetle floor pan, it's actually slightly tapered. So when you shorten it like you would with a beach buggy, it's quite a lot of faffing about to try and make everything line up. Whereas with the Type 3 floor pan, it's basically got parallel sides. You could actually remove quite a bit of metal. I think we took out, what was it, about a metre and a half or so?
Yeah, at least
yeah.
a metre and a half.
So it was quite crazy. So it was super, super short wheelbase. It had an amazing turning circle, but because the Volkswagen engine hung out the back, the air-cooled engine, obviously it would do wheelies really rather too easily. So we then had to put that big metal weight on the
counterweight we got from a scrapyard.
Yeah, so it's like a big hammer that you use for smashing up metal at a scrapyard. It's about 200 kilograms of just raw steel or iron, and that just was bolted onto the front. And it was fantastic fun, but it only had 3 seats. And then we got asked to do a hen night, and so I ended up making this thing. So we actually had 7 seats, so we could obviously accommodate far more people. In fact, it's actually fully street legal. You can take it out on the road, you can even take it on the motorway.
That was absolutely one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Fantastic, great fun.
So if we just peel back the duvet, you can see that we've actually got an area here where we've actually got the 4 people sit down there, kind of reclined, quite comfortably actually. You can just kind of slip in like so, and it's actually very, very lovely place to hang out. Now, because the engine is underneath your legs just down here, on a cold winter's day it is lovely and warm and toasty, but when it rains, obviously because of all the flapping sheets, you do get rather whipped in the face. So it's obviously not ideal, is it? But then, actually, I guess because it isn't such a practical vehicle for every single day use, then obviously it tends to get left on the side for those special occasions. And the last 2 times I can remember driving this We did one where we actually went down to a kind of outdoor concert and actually just parked up in the car park with this and a wonderful time. But then the other thing was a lovely couple called Toby and Emma, which is hence all these lovely daisies and ivy. Now, the reason we're working on it today is because we're going to another gig. We're going to do a music video. Now, the thing about this car is it's actually incredibly reliable, so we never really have to look on it at all. But today, we're just going to go through, check all the fluids, check the tyres, and just sort out a few bits and pieces. And you seem to be holding a brass ball.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, it's got an M10 riv nut inside here. But what's happening, it's spinning round. So when we try to put it on the studding there, it's just turning around and we're not actually getting anywhere. So we need to come up with a way of securing this riv nut back into the brass
well, I'll tell you what, maybe if I do a little bit of silver soldering, that might solve that problem. Meanwhile, you could do some of the fluids.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool, so I'll tell you what we do. I'll have a look underneath here. This is where the engine is based. So we just pop that over the top there, like so. Remove a little bit of the comfort here, and then lift up this engine bay. And then we have that 1400 K series. So Paul can crack on with that, and I'll crack on with a bit of soldering. Kiss your ball, sir. Right then. Now this is going to be quite an interesting fix. We had this little bit of a rattle on the bed. It's quite annoying, and Paul's managed to narrow it down to the bed knob. Now you can see there is this sort of stainless steel riv nut in there. Normally, when that's put on to the brass, it's kind of clamped down either side of that very, very thin bit of metal, and that kind of holds it tight. But obviously over time it's been damaged or knocked or whatever, and now that nut is actually rather loose, which means then ultimately all the other bits of brass are no longer really held down properly to the bed post. Quite an important thing to fix. So what I need to do is somehow attach that back to the brass. Now the first thing is I'm terrified that that nut's just going to drop into the sphere. So the very, very first thing I'm going to do is just pop in a little bit of studding, and I'm going to try and pull it while I'm winding it up at the same time. That's now at least going to stop it from dropping any further through. So now I have a brass ball on the end of a stick. Well, now I've actually stopped the nut from dropping inside the sphere. The next thing I need to work out is how I'm actually going to join the two together again and stop them rattling around. So what I'm hoping I can do, I'm just going to connect up or make a little rig. Right, so now it's one less hand I have to worry about, but I can now try and work out how to fix these two together. Now obviously I can't weld them, partly because they're actually dissimilar metals. Stainless steel and brass would be a bit tricky, but also I don't actually want to melt either of those metals themselves because they're both very, very delicate. So the next option would be brazing. Now with brazing, what you're effectively doing is getting more molten metal and actually sort of building that up on the surface of the two metals you're trying to join together. It ends up looking a bit like weld, but actually it's an extra metal that's added into the mix. The thing is, in this case, there's not an awful lot of material that I could do that to where I could connect the two together. So the best option is going to be silver brazing, or in fact silver soldering. And the idea with that is it uses capillary action, so that molten metal actually flows in between the two parts. So imagine you've got these two surfaces there, and the surface tension kind of pulls it into position, and once the metal is frozen again, becoming back to a solid, then you've got a nice strong bond between the two metals. So that's my best option. Now the way to achieve that, obviously these parts have been around for a long time, they're probably oxidized on both surfaces, so I need a flux, and that flux actually cleans away any of that oxidization, ready for this new molten metal to flow between the two parts. So there's going to be heat involved, there's going to be flux involved, and the very first thing I want to do is make up a little slurry, so the flux comes as a powder. If I mix it with water, I can make this kind of paste, and I'm hoping if the paste is wet enough, it'll then flow between these two parts, because the other thing I want to worry about is not then joining my bolt to the nut. That'd be very uncool. So it's going to be a little bit precise, but here goes. Right, so this is my flux. It's in powdered form, and in here I've got a little tiny bit of water. So what I'm going to do is just pop that in there. I'm just going to try and make sort of a little liquid solution of paste, really. And the idea is that this flux then will hopefully get into those difficult to reach places. It's going to help clean both surfaces of the metal, but it's going to help them, the molten metal, then flow into position. So I think now we'll give it a go. I've got my little brazing rod here, so I'm just going to clean the end of that with a little bit of a Scotch pad there, and then I'm going to ever so gently try and touch this between the stainless steel and the brass. Just going to zit around the top. And the idea is that as soon as I start heating it up, the water is actually going to just dry out pretty quickly, leaving the powdery flux. And when it gets up to temperature, the flux will then actually melt and then flow into, using the capillary action, into between the two metals, cleaning the surfaces, and also giving a sort of little path, like you would with a water droplet down a windscreen perhaps. Once it's found a path, it'll keep going there. So that's the idea. So I'm just going to try and make sure I don't get any of this into where the threads feed in. So there we go. So hopefully that's now enough. And because I've moved it around, you can see that the flux has had an opportunity just to flood in. So now we can apply some heat and hopefully it will start to flow even better. Okay, so just put some protection on just in case. Now, the thing is, in fact, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to heat the bolt rather than all the brass to start with, just to try and get that heat to go into the nut, and then it will feed out towards the brass. But you'll see, first of all, that water, or the flux is going to turn into a powder, and then it's going to start going liquid again. So you can see the water boiling off. It's leaving a powder. So now the flux has dried out. Keep going with the heat, and that's actually eventually going to start to liquefy itself, and that's going to then flow in between the two bits of metal. That's cool. So now I can start to add the silver solder in places, and then if it gets a bit stuck, I've just got this little bit of steel here, just a little bit of welding wire. I'm just going to then poke it into position. There we go, and then it can start to flow where we want it to flow, which is fab. So you can see, you know you've got it right to the right temperature, because basically it will start to melt away just as you want it to. So that's all looking pretty good. So I think now, just put that down there, it's still going to be hot on the end. I would say that's looking actually pretty tidy. I'm not going to say surprisingly tidy, I want to say pretty tidy. It's looking pretty good. So now that silver solder has gone in and joined between the steel and the brass, so it should be rattle free now, which it is, which is great. So then once that's back on the bed, that's actually going to make that slightly more pleasant and calming driving experience. But it's quite a handy little fix, and I think that little trick with the bolt worked a treat. So wonderful stuff. So just a little tiny bit of polish just to finish it off. Just get rid of some of that little bit of discoloration. Effectively it's oxidization, where it's actually blackened. It's not really necessary, but it's just nice to know that it's kind of back to where it used to be. It's nice to have a bit of a patina anyway, but this way it looked like it's just been set out there in nature. So what I might do is just pop a little bit of those really obvious stains. You just get in a little bit further into the oxidization with the Scotch pad. I mean, let's face it, nobody's ever going to see this anyway, but it's just nice to know it can be done. And I don't want to go too mad with the polish, because it's got quite a nice patina on it, and I like to keep it that way. And also I've learned from bitter experience that it doesn't really matter how well you polish them up within a couple of weeks outdoors. They come back to this pretty quickly anyway, so it makes it look nice and authentic. Right, I think that'll do nicely. Let's pop it back onto the bed. Maybe a dash of XCP too. Well then, sir, how are you getting on?
Hello, mate. Yeah, not too bad. I've done the oil, the water, And I've just finished pumping the tyres up. It's all done. How'd you get on?
Nice, good. Well, look at that. So a little bit of silver solder.
Lovely. Look at that. Good
And
to
now
know.
we're good. A little bit of XCP just to make sure it doesn't seize up again when we put it back on.
Yeah, we don't
and
want
then
that
I
jamming
think
again.
we're good. So the next thing we need to do is actually take off all the ivy.
Okay.
So we'll just, I guess, close up the engine bay if you're now finished with that.
Yeah, we do that. Need some side cutters.
Yes, I can probably manage that for you. And I think, to be honest, we should also then go for a little bit of a test drive, perhaps.
Sounds like a good idea.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Okay. It's done a fair few miles, this thing.
Yes.
Cool. Let's just, right, well, basically all this ivy's kind of held on with a little clip, little cable ties to this, so we can just. That's cooking with gas, that is. There you go. So, I think pop yourself into bed. So tuck yourself in, lovely.
Oh, here we go. This is nice.
Right, a quick whiz around the yard and then we'll load her up. Well, here we are on location, ready to film a pop video with the charming and talented Mereki Beach. We're going to be driving around on the bed and into an enchanted wood for a very ethereal song. Should be a fun day. Now we have to set up the camera and plump our bedding. Mereki is going to sing her song 2 or 3 times faster than normal speed, so once the video is slowed down so the words match the music, her floating hair will have a more ethereal, magical, slow motion movement. Oh, I haven't been in bed with a cameraman and a musician no, for a long time, actually. It's been good to be back. But to keep her hair out of her face, I'm going to have to drive backwards all day. Pretty typical progress for most of the projects in the workshop, to be honest. I'm looking for a mossy rock for the next location. I think I found it. Stand in a road without getting hit.
I did.
That's a good thing.
I walked with the car.
And this is Mereki Beach. So Mereki, kind of what is the inspiration for the bed? Why is it here? And what's the name of the song?
Well, you're the inspiration for the bed, let's be honest. We saw the bed car and I immediately thought of my song. It was originally called Morning Fight and now the name is Wake Up Dead.
Okay.
And the song is sort of about this transformation from sleeping life into waking life, but also, you know, on a more cerebral level, sort of the way that we can dream whilst we are, you know, walking through life, right? So there's the surrealist element of wanting to be in the bed and sort of connect with this version of ourselves that is deep within us. But there's also, I guess, some sort of rebellion against normal life and society and what we're meant to do versus what we want to do, which is float through on a bed car through the woods.
And it's an amazing location.
I mean, Knotwood is absolutely stunning.
And the weather's been really good too.
Yeah, we got so lucky today. Literally this week rained every single day, and then our one bed car day.
That's awesome.
Meant to be. I love that, Ruthie. Okay, guys, that's a wrap.
To see the finished result, do check out Mereki's full pop video here. What a fun duvet day.